and welcome to the 52 List podcast with Moorea Seal. Today, I have an incredible guest. I have Morgan Harper Nichols, who I admire so much in so many ways, and I can't wait to share her magical world with you. Morgan is an autistic and ADHD artist, poet, and musician, and her work is inspired by stories, conversations, and everyday life. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's still so surreal that we're getting to have this conversation because I'm so as even though I'm like very on social media, I get so nervous like sending DMs and stuff. And I've read your story in a book and I was like, I just really want to send a DM. This is probably too much. And I've freaked out about it so much. But then your response, ever since then, I'm just like, oh, so grateful. I'm so glad that the connection happened. So yes.
You are such a treasure, and I am honored and humbled that you would even feel nervous about reaching out to me. Because I'm like, no, no, you, no, you. Morgan and I
Oh my
have
goodness.
a wild amount of things in common. She first heard about me through the book Unmasking Autism by Dr. Devin Price. um, but then come to find out we are both pastors' kids. We are both eldest daughters. We both have ADHD and autism, and were diagnosed very late in life. We
Mhm.
both are artists at heart. We both have been musicians. We have just a similar
And
flavor of autism and
and books
existence.
with
Oh,
art. We
and we
both
write
make
books.
books with art in it.
Yes.
It's
And
amazing.
you have something exciting coming out in 2 weeks. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your newest book?
Oh my goodness, I totally said that. I was not trying to make a segue there, but
Well,
that was
I made the connection,
thank you.
baby.
I promise everyone that was not scripted. I oh my goodness. But yes, I do. I do make books and I have another one coming out that's art and poetry. I'm really proud of it cuz it's called You Are Only Just Beginning. And I've done a few art and poetry books at this point. It's the third of like a little trilogy, but this one has like a whole chapter on elephants and what I love about elephants, what I've learned from elephants, and I never thought I would get to put a book out there like that in the world because I often feel like the things that I'm really interested in when I share them, just in the past, I'll share things and people are like, yeah, but what's like the other, like the real part behind it? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I really,
Literally.
like, I'm like, studying elephants makes me cry. Like, I'm not, this
Mm.
isn't like a lead up to something else. I'm like, no, it's not a metaphor. I don't think you understand. So I never thought I would get to write a book like that. Like and
Mm.
it's to me, it's just very special because I do tend to feel like I have to hide a lot of my interests and things or
Yeah,
modify them to
yeah.
make them appealing to uh neurotypical gays.
Mhm.
Quoting Devin Price there. I I'd never let go of that after hearing that because I was just like, yeah, that I can see how sometimes that even affects my creativity and feeling like I have to modify and change things so much. So I feel like
Yeah.
this book is the most of me saying, this is really me. Like this is just the stuff
Mm.
that I tinker with and think about and has helped me just breathe during these very
Yeah,
difficult times. And I hope that it can be a gift to others.
I am sure it will be. And so you've written 3 books. Where in that trilogy were you diagnosed with autism?
Yeah, that's okay. I think it was a good question. I want to say it was right before the second book came out. So it
Mhm.
was
You'd already written the 2nd book?
yes, yeah. But was I in the process of oh, I'm getting everything mixed up now. I think I started the my so I yeah, everyone's story is different, and mine's was pretty long in terms of the
Yeah,
diagnosis process. The specialist that I found likes to work with people over a course of months and several months, and I think also COVID had spread it out as well too. So it was
yeah.
several months from I want sometime I want to say October 2020 is when I had my first appointment, and then it wasn't until February 2021 that I like had like here's your formal diagnosis,
Yeah.
autism, ADHD, sensory processing disorder. So, yeah.
And did you I mean, what was also that journey to getting a diagnosis like for you? I mean, I've had my own hurdles, in it, number 1, just not being a 4-year-old white boy who doesn't talk,
Mhm.
sets you up for a lot of challenges in finally getting a diagnosis, and I'm sure you've had your hurdles in being listened to, 1 as a
Mhm.
Black person, 1 as a woman,
Mhm.
and much more. I had the hurdles of I look very femme and I am queer, and these things make it harder
Mhm.
when you're not a 4-year-old little white boy.
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
was it like, finding a therapist
Oh
and
my goodness.
finally being
Yes.
heard?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's if you don't fit that one description, then you're pretty much left on your own. And there's people helping make that better now. But if you
Yeah.
grew up in the 90s and certainly before, that was not really the case. And so my journey started very young. I have a sister who has Tourette syndrome and was diagnosed at 9 years old,
Mhm.
and she has like visible tics, and even then it was hard for her. It was a very
Mm.
similar story of just like Black girls with Tourette's just not being really researched. It
Yeah.
was a struggle for her. So in terms of, like, seeing neurologists, like, that was something that was a part of our life at a young age, and my mom would often say, "Well, I have, another daughter," like, I'm sitting right there, and she has, X, Y, and Z, and, she struggles with this and this and that, and just always brushed off like, "Oh, it's probably nothing. She's just
Yeah.
probably quirky or whatever, and, oh, she
Yeah.
loves books," and, and no further thought, so all of my seemingly invisible struggles were just sort of I internalized it as, well, I guess it's just me, and I gotta work through it, and it was just really sad because I even saw, like, my mom, I mean, she has her own health issues as well. She is such an advocate for me and my sister's health, and
Mhm.
as hard as she tried, as best as she tried to articulate, "Hey, there's something here." And I go through the effort of sharing all that because I'm like, even if someone does have support and they do have someone there that's like, "Hey, there's something going here, like, I'm trying to help them," even then, it's still a struggle. So
Yep.
it wasn't until I was, 27. When I was 27, I was just sort of like, I always remember the thing about, like, your brain develops fully at age 27. So,
Yeah,
I was
which
like a
is
key
very
moment. That was
autistic
a
of
key
you.
moment for me, and I was like, "Okay, the stuff doesn't seem to have developed." I'm still struggling, like, having regular work. I'm struggling with just trying to figure out how to pay a bill over the phone. Like, it's just everything is exhausting. Even I
Yeah,
can't even get to the existential stuff. Like, just the
right.
day-to-day point A to point B, trying to remember to microwave my lunch. It's
Yeah,
just I'm like, what is going on? Like, why do I feel like I'm always struggling? And that was just a thing. It may sound very surface level to some, but it wasn't. It was just that, like, it was so every little everyday thing, and I'm like,
yeah.
"It's been this way for years, and it seems like it's not getting better." So, I
Mhm.
went to the doctor, just my regular primary care doctor, and I just kinda casually mentioned, I'm like, "Hey, I think it could be a possibility that I could be on the spectrum, and do you have any recommendations?" Like, I didn't even say, "I think I'm autistic." I was just like, "Do you have any recommendations
Yeah.
for speaking with someone to consider it as a possibility of something?"
Mhm.
Totally brushed me off, didn't even look up from his clipboard. He was just like, "You're no, you have nothing to worry about. You're not autistic." Like, if you are, and then I don't remember what he said after this, but when I think about it, I'm like, "Oh my goodness." Like, I hope for whatever reason he is not out there saying this still today. But
Yeah.
he was like, "Yeah, well, if you're autistic, you would have come in here XYZ da 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 da." At that point, I didn't even hear what he said. I was just like,
Yeah, you'd be tapping on yourself.
exactly.
You'd be
Yeah,
doing silly
I don't
things.
remember.
You were
Yeah.
looking
Oh, so
at
sadly though, I left that appointment just taking his word. And I was just like, well, he's a doctor. I don't really know where to go from there because in order to
Mhm.
speak to anybody else, you oftentimes have to have, referrals and stuff. And I just sort of left it there and just continued to struggle and just continued to think that, well, I think I kind of got into, okay, well, it's because I'm an artist. So I
Yeah.
really leaned into
Yes.
that.
Mhm.
And thankfully that worked out. So all that was happening at the same time. Like when I was starting my whole art thing and sharing it, I wasn't very good at it. I was like losing followers when I first started sharing it because I was trying to do music before, and then one day I just flipped and I was just like, here's some spray paint on canvases. Who wants to help me figure this out? Because I didn't have like other work experience or anything. And, it's just, and even if you do have work experience, it's still hard to find jobs
Yeah.
for anybody. So I was just struggling financially and struggling to just kind of piece by piece put it together. And I'm also married. Me and my husband, we met in college, and we just it was so random, like how we met. We just met in college, and we're just like, "Hey, let's get married." And ever since then, it's just been trying to piece it together,
Yeah.
one thing after another. So he was like doing a lot of odd jobs himself, and we're just odd jobbing it up. It still kind of feels like that, but
Yeah.
just doing all these odd jobs and trying to make it work. And then 2020 happened, and it was right after I turned 30, February 4th, 2020. So I just turned 30, and then a month later, lockdowns are happening, and I feel like that was the first time I really faced myself in my life
Mhm. Yeah.
because that was now 30 years of just high strung, trying so hard to be a human in this
Yep.
world,
Yep.
and so many systems and structures were just questioned and things put on halts, obviously in a global sense,
Yeah.
and all the way down to, personal level as well, that I was like, everything feels strangely calm in a way of like,
Yeah.
I
You're
think
not
some of that has
having to fit into certain
exactly.
outside pressures, so then
Yeah.
you're alone with yourself and
And
you're loud.
yeah, and it's like, of course, I don't COVID was is obviously horrible, and we've lost way too many people as a result of that. And for me personally in that moment, it was a shedding of my old
Yeah.
self. It was
Mhm.
because right before that, oh, I was about to just be the little artist influencer. I was like, well, this is what you got to do. Like we had gotten a little tour together, and now I look at that, I'm like, no. There's no
Yeah.
reason why I should have even done that tour. So it didn't, obviously that didn't happen. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that ended up didn't happen. And I look at it now and I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't have happened. So I don't know what would have happened to my mental
Yeah.
health, my physical health, and
Yeah.
all of that. So 2020 was the starting point of recognizing, oh, something's up. Like maybe it's just me wanting to stay at home forever and never leave the house. Maybe that's the only thing. I don't know. But something is up with me. Like
Mhm.
I am in no rush to get back to whatever that was.
Yeah.
So it was during 2020 that I was on TikTok and I started seeing adults talk about their experience with getting diagnosed as adults. And that was the first time that it was like, wait a minute. I wasn't even looking for it. I think it was just because I follow a lot of people just speaking about their health journeys and about different things. And it's just something I care about. And just we need a lot of systems change around that in general, and I listen to a lot of stories, so I think that's probably why the algorithm maybe showing it to me because I wasn't even looking
Yeah.
for it, but then it started showing up, and then it was from there that I heard a few different people say, like, look for a specialist if you think this could be you. Look for a specialist who speaks to adults, who has
Yeah.
specialty with working with adults. That's a huge d factor for a lot of people. Obviously, that doesn't always guarantee that, sadly, that people will be listened
Right.
to, but it was like, that's a step, like, go go towards someone that has worked with adults. So, thankfully, I was able to find someone. It took me a few attempts. I tried
Mhm.
2 other places, 2 maybe 2 or 3. They were either full or they said they work with adults, but they really didn't. And then ultimately I found my doctor who had the actual experience, and had experience working with people that look like me.
Mm,
And that made the difference for me. And it was even more of that, just shedding of the old self and having to face myself without all of that, or trying to at least, and I'm
yeah,
still on that journey. So, yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
a bit of the journey of how I got here with all of that. So, yeah.
that is so relatable for me, hugely so parallel in many ways, and also I hope for a lot of people listening that it is relatable for them, and I hope that that encourages them and empowers them to keep seeking out people who will listen to them. I'm hoping that with the rise of TikTok and more people speaking to their experience, that more people who are in power of giving diagnoses and
Mhm.
providing care, that they learn from us
Mhm.
and provide more space for marginalized people to be
Mhm.
validated in their
Yeah,
experiences.
absolutely. That's it right
We
there.
really need that
Yes. Oh
because
my
there's plenty of
goodness.
therapists who say that they, know autism, but they
Mhm.
don't. They
Mhm.
know the old story of
Yeah.
autism of one specific type of person, and
Mhm.
we need more people in power to
Yeah.
educate themselves so that they can truly help.
Yes, absolutely. I
I
am
want that.
absolutely in agreement on that.
Yeah. Do you feel like I mean, I think some challenges in my journey of the diagnosis is that if you're an artistic person, if you're quirky, if if at any point in your life people called you artsy, indie, quirky, manic pixie
Interesting.
girl, all of these things are like masks for autism, it feels
Yes.
like.
Yes,
They
yes.
are they're ways for other people to categorize us and figure out how to deal with our quirks, our kooky
Yes,
qualities,
exactly.
our directness, our
Yeah.
growing up, my parents, being the eldest daughter of a pastor, there were expectations for how I presented myself to the world. And I'm a representative of my dad in the small community I grow up in, and I must be appropriate and I must be polite. Did you grow up with that kind of pressure and expectation?
Yes, absolutely. And for me though, it was interesting because I actually got it more from church members than my parents.
Me too.
That was way more of it. Like, it
Yeah.
was, my parent doesn't live with me every day. Like, I think at some point they're like, Morgan's
Yeah.
Morgan is Morgan.
Yeah.
And, and there was a lot of stuff they were just like, okay. Like, I was just me and my sister both. We're just very, we're just who we are. Let's just say
Yeah.
that. And we were homeschooled. So, and my mom, who she was just and is just the kind of person of like, be different, embrace your different. So I do think that
Mm,
helped me have some kind of just like, okay, it's okay. Other people might not be okay with it,
yeah.
but you're okay. I did get that, and I'm so grateful for that
Yeah.
because I do think that was key for my mental health. At
Yeah.
least at home, I felt like I'll give you a very specific example. So when I forget what year, but sometime in the 90s, the Game Boy Colors came out. And I loved the atomic purple Game Boy Color. Like, that was a transformational moment in my life when that device came out, because it was translucent. I could see on the inside while still simultaneously playing the game. It has a lot of meaning for me.
Yeah.
And I played that Game Boy Color past the age that culturally a little girl
Yeah.
turning into a preteen, turning into a teen will be interested in something like that.
Yeah.
But it was only leaving the house that I became aware that, oh, these things that you're interested in, these are little kid things now. Like, you
I'm
should have
supposed to move on
progressed
from it.
into makeup. And I never got into makeup. Like, I never went, and a lot of the other girls I knew were. So it was often at church that I experienced the most othering, the most "you're weird," and I think that the biggest of all of them was that I was always doing something a few years behind everyone else. So that was my it was always, "We're not doing that anymore." So that was my
Mhm.
biggest thing. Whatever I was interested in, "Oh, we're not doing that anymore. We've grown up to this, to that." It could be about how I dress, it could be, music, it could be what I was playing with, whatever. So I got very good at hiding my interest, and that's
Yeah.
something I'm still unpacking. Like I don't even the way I just said that now, I don't even think I was like, I need to write that down the way I just said it, because I'm just now unpacking the stuff in therapy, because it creates this whole environment of you just trying to survive in this world. And yeah, that's a long way of saying yes to answer your question. I'm like, clearly still unpacking it.
Yeah.
I've written about it a little bit, but I
Mm.
there's more to it, and I'm trying to write about it more, trying to speak about it more, because I know that I'm not the only one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, like growing up, I'm sure you fixated on things and you
Hmm.
just loved it so much.
Yes.
And in the world of career, that's good.
Hmm.
But as a kid, like my dad would always tell me, like, "Oh, Maria, like right now you're the weirdo and no one likes you and people bully you and like these are all of the labels are being putting on you right now. Like you're not changing interests as quickly as everybody else. You're fixated
Hmm.
on your own things. But I promise you, when you're a grown up, all of those things will make you interesting. All of those things will make you cool because you
Hmm.
are an individual." And I remember at one point in high school, I came home crying and I was like, I can't make myself like other people. Everybody else is making themselves like each other, but I can't do it. I would love to fit in and that for that to be easy, but I can't do it. I'm just always going to be other and I don't
Yeah.
understand. Did you kind of have that experience too? It sounds
Oh
like
my
you did.
goodness. Yes. I wrote this song when I was 17, and I've actually been trying to work up the courage to share it again, because it
I would
was
love to hear it.
but the first line of the song says, I wrote this at 17, and I'm like, it was, "One day I'm gonna grow up and everything's gonna make sense." But I said that last year and I'm still struggling with it.
Yeah.
And the chorus of the song says, "You don't have to lie to me if you think I'm weak. I'll be someone somewhere else. I'll be someone somewhere else."
Mm,
And when I think about that, I was like, yeah, I just kept doing that every year. It
yeah.
was like, not with this group, but hopefully somewhere else. Not
Yeah.
here, but hopefully somewhere else, but not
I
here,
get
hopefully somewhere
people.
else. Yeah. And the thing
Mhm.
that I was trying to navigate all of that without any language, without any understanding of what was going on, I'm like, it's a miracle that I'm here, because that was so exhausting,
Yeah.
um, to just not have a sense of place. And
Yep.
even if I'm in a room of people who look like me, or even if I'm in a room of people where we're all playing music together,
Yep.
to just, no matter what, you get pushed into that outer ring.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely, in some ways I do feel like it's come full circle, because I've just moved back to Georgia where I grew up.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I was like, "Oh, I actually have, as a result of all of that, I actually have now developed some kind of tools around, like, what we were talking about before, just saying no, of just like, I don't even wanna fit in with y'all anymore, like,
I
you
don't
do
wanna be part of
you,
your group.
have a wonderful life,
Yeah.
but I'm just gonna go over here." Like, "Oh, you don't like that? Well, too bad, because it's actually a wonderful time." Like, I love games of all
Yeah.
kinds, video games, board games, you name it.
Mhm.
Recently realized a lot of people hate games. I wasn't aware of that,
I have
which
a dad who hates games, and my mom is obsessed with games. So in my family growing up, it was always my mom being like, "Can we play a game,
Oh
please?
my goodness,
Please?" And I'd be like,
which I have a, which I have a thought about that too. I'm like, I wonder if the people who hate games are really good at playing social games.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm curious for you to, I don't know if you've thought about this, but after my diagnosis, I was like, okay, well, like, it seems like half of the world is autistic. At this point, now I feel like there's a lot of us. And if it's not just me, it's probably in my parents too. It's probably in
Mhm.
generations before them. Let me look at my parents and see the ways, like, what are their very specific special skills. Like, my
Mhm.
dad told me, I think that both my parents are probably a little bit on the spectrum. um I When I told my dad about all these different ways, I'm like, when I came out, when I was leaving a marriage that wasn't right for me, when I was shifting my life, that was so hard and scary. Autistic people do like the spaces when they find a
Mhm.
comfortable space to sit in it. But I was still
Yeah.
like, this is not the right space. When I explained all of that to my dad, he was like, if I were your age, I'd probably would have done a lot of similar things too, but I'm old and I like my boxes.
Mm.
I was like, ah, yes, that sounds autistic to me. That sounds like
Yeah.
you figured out how, like, within being a pastor, he figured out how to socialize with people. He figured out his role in socializing with people. Uh, but there's other games that he can't face. It's too much. Can you
Wow.
see any of
Wow.
that in your parents? Like, do
Oh
you
my
see
goodness.
them kind of
We
like,
talk about it all the time. Like, after my diagnosis, like, looking around the room, we're like, "Okay, who's
hey,
next?"
you,
But now it's turned to, well, who's not autistic in our family? Like, that is like it's because I remember talking to my specialist too, and I would just tell her childhood story. She's like, "Have your parents considered?" Um, I was like, no, but there's definitely something here because it is, yeah, yeah, it's in the family,
yeah,
absolutely, for sure. And
there.
I just even think about like things like so growing up, like when we would go to the movies and we would leave the movies, I wasn't aware that all people don't have like an hour-long conversation about like their favorite lines in the plot or what other similar films did similar things and how that connected to the director's last work and what the social implications were of that character
Mhm.
being portrayed that way and how that was not a good trope, but they did bring it back down to the end in somewhat of a redemptive way, but they could have done that slightly differently. Like that was just how we talked after we left the
That's
movie theater.
awesome.
Like I remember seeing like there was a movie that came out about it was called Glory Road. It was like a I think a black basketball team in Texas, and I think they had a white coach. It was based on a historical event. I can't remember the exact story, but when we left the theater, like my mom was just like, "Oh, notice how did you all notice how the white people who in the theater with us, they did act seem to act a little bit differently after we left?" And we were like, "Yeah, we
Oh,
noticed that too, because it probably opened up some ways that these biases might exist in their life." And we're just like talking about this over
mm,
CC pizza, like after the movie.
that's
And it's just
amazing.
and it was like and that's still how we talk as a family.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
what are the social implications of that? Like, what does that
mhm.
mean? Like, and it is I'm not saying that only autistic people can talk about this, but
Right.
just that was like a that's like a family special interest, I guess you
Yeah.
could
Yes.
say. It's
Yeah.
just let's like get into the nitty-gritty about this specific
Yeah.
piece of media and all the things it connects to, and we could just talk about it for a long time. And yeah, one of my favorite
That's
childhood pastimes, I guess. But yeah,
yeah, that's
it's
so cool.
yeah, yeah.
Well, it's
I'm
interesting.
pretty happy about that.
I feel like I've started to say, like, this is my flavor of autism because
Mhm.
I've met lots of autistic people now,
Yeah.
and also close friends of mine have
Yeah.
been diagnosed. It's like, no wonder.
Yes,
Duh,
it's
duh,
called a
duh.
spectrum. Yes, it's
Yeah.
a spectrum, and yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, it's like different flavors, and it sounds like our families have really similar flavors of autism, because a lot of my childhood, like my evenings were spent me and my dad just like philosophizing about things for
Mm.
hours.
Yeah.
We would just sit there and like just get into the nitty-gritty of existence and why people function the way that they function. And uh I think that's probably what, it's interesting that we both have the parallels of like both being people who are like, I want to understand people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
art and music are a way for me to process and share how I'm
Yes.
feeling and what I'm thinking. And I've also had a lot of people come to me and be like, what a beautiful metaphor. And I was like, I was being literal. I didn't
Oh my gosh. Okay.
what?
Oh, that one. Okay. Let me try to calm down. I
Yeah.
That is so serious for me. The amount of times, and I love my editors who I work with on my books, but the amount of times I've heard either or their book or different
Wow.
things. Not so much my book editor actually. It's actually been some other people who've
Yeah.
said this, like, "Can you say that but like less poetic without the metaphor?" I'm like, "No!" I'm like,
I see.
"It's not a metaphor to me." Like I am talking about literal sunlight. Like, and literal sunlight's impact on me. Like,
Yeah.
it is so wild how that is hard to explain to people. So yeah,
It's
I
like
tend to
we naturally speak a different language, I guess.
yes,
And
it's
maybe also the influence of growing up, I don't know, again, growing up with pastors as dads, I saw my dad give a beautiful speech every week,
mhm,
give a sermon.
yeah.
And the way my dad would give a sermon is he would bring in a lot of historical context. He is a history
I
nerd.
think our dads would be friends.
Yeah. You're like, section of facts, the context of this and the time of the blah, 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 blah. And I love that and I appreciate that. Um, but yeah, but even when he'd talk about historical things, it still would just have this like romance and poeticness to it.
Mhm,
And I absolutely inherited that.
yeah.
I'll say things that people, even in college, I would have friends who'd be like, "You think so much. You just think a lot."
Yeah,
And I'd be like,
like,
"Yeah, no,
our other people's overthinking, it's just our thinking.
yeah,
I'm just
I'm
like
just thinking. I'm not overthinking. I'm just thinking a lot."
I actually think about overthinking in this way. I'm like, I see it very literally, that word over. So I'm like, there's the thinking and then there's the thinking over the thinking.
Mhm.
And I'm like, in my personal opinion, I think that we're not doing enough as a society.
Yeah.
We're not doing enough of that overthinking. So I was
Mhm.
like, think we need some more thoughts over the thoughts that can look over the thoughts of those thoughts. Just my personal opinion here,
This makes sense
but
to me.
but it has been thought about. So I
This all makes sense to me, and it sounds like you also have, like, when you're thinking, it's very visual.
oh, yes. Oh my
That's
goodness.
how
It's in
that's how I
space. Yeah,
function.
I
Yeah.
see it in physical space. So it's very interesting. I had a moment a few months ago where I was like going to this like retreat thing, and it was like a break time after, and people had varying degrees of thoughts about what was shared during that section of the retreat. And some people were like, I just don't get it. I don't get the concept. And I was like, yeah, well, I actually didn't understand the concept either. But I asked other people in the group, I was like, but where in your mind did you put it, the thing that you don't understand? And everyone just stared at me. They were like, what are you talking about? I just didn't get it. I was like, yeah, but I put things in like a certain, like, oh, I'll come back to that because I may need more information to kind of round it out. Cause I was like, it
Mhm.
probably connects to something. I'm just not making the connection yet. And I'm doing this, and everyone's looking like, no, I just don't get it. And I'm like, no, we gotta stop doing this, everybody. I was like, I think we might be able to solve world peace if we start if we
It's
start thinking
just
about the things that we don't get and say, I'm just gonna put it over here for a minute and
yeah,
see it as an object, as a thing. I don't fully understand it either, but I'm not just gonna. I don't have to shoo it away from me. It's just like, oh, I don't understand it. Let me just
and that's okay.
let
I
me
feel
just
like
let
that's
it hang out in the
yeah,
sphere of things.
that is such a gift, I think, that people who have the diagnosis of autism get to hold on to, is that
Hmm.
we are so used to not understanding so many things
Oh,
that
yes.
society and a system has set up, and people are trying to tell us, "But this is how it is," and we're like, logically, this does not make sense
Absolutely.
to
You
me,
said it
and
perfectly. Mhm.
I'm trying to put it together, but it does not make sense. I don't like,
Yeah.
explain to me why again. No, still
That's
doesn't make sense to me.
exactly. That's what it
It's
is.
like
It's because we have to do that all the time. You're right. We're
constantly. So we
always
have
having
the
to say, "I
capacity.
don't get it," but clearly everyone else in the room does. So
Mhm.
I don't have the luxury, I don't have the privilege of just shooing it away and
Yeah.
just saying, "Oh, I won't even consider it." Because it's like, well, if I need to function in society, if I need to make a doctor's appointment.
Mhm.
There is stuff that I'm gonna have to say, "I don't understand this, but I've gotta let it sit here for a minute. Because if I don't, then that might be the difference between me getting help for a physical issue or not." So,
Yes.
yeah, that's whew, yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's basically like we've been gaslit by ourselves,
Mhm,
validated by society structure
mhm,
all the time.
mhm, mhm,
So, I mean, I think it's beautiful, profound, and strange and surreal that you and I both were, given the diagnosis of autism, like, after a year of living in a pandemic
mhm,
because we had this y the time alone was so helpful for both of us to reckon with ourselves,
mhm.
but also we just observed society at large reckoning with itself.
Yeah, yeah,
We participated a bit on our own. Yeah, to see mass groups of people say no, uh, culture at large has said we will keep upholding racism
yeah,
structurally. To have
yeah,
mass groups of people say no,
yeah.
I think has been so profound in so many individuals realizing, oh, I and me too on an individual
Mhm.
level. What am I allowed to peel off and say no?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right, and yeah, I am happy for stories like ours, and at the same time, yeah, I'm just like, I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping that
Yeah,
more people and, as we continue to progress into this whole, like, "Let's get back to normal," even though, like, everyone says, "Let's not get back to normal," but then I feel like
what is
everyone's
normal?
so yeah, it's like, like, the amount of times, like, I have to just still remind myself, like, "Hey, you don't have to go back to whatever version of what you think your life should be." Yeah, I think sometimes I still catch myself kind of gaslighting myself a little bit, and
Yeah.
I have to bring it back and say, "Oh, no, no, we're not doing that today." Like, we are not putting that pressure on ourselves. Like, even today, I woke up so much later than I planned, and yeah, there's like a whole list of things that I didn't get to, and
And
I'm just like,
you're still
it's
here.
okay. Yeah, it's fine. Like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah.
If I get to it, and
If I ever get to it.
yeah,
'Cause I know for
exactly.
sure.
So, I'm definitely trying to do that more, so, yeah.
Well, I would love to get into the list that you filled out from
Yes.
52 Lists for Happiness.
Mhm. I
You
have
filled
it
out
here.
list number 5,
I
which is
did.
list the best choices you have made in your life so far, and I'm so excited to hear your random assortment of best life
Oh
choices.
my goodness, yes, and I going back to the whole thing of, like, gaslighting ourselves, like, I just have to show you the page. I, like, added a little amendments because I felt like I didn't do the page right, so I was just like I was like, when I said right where it says, "List of best choices you have made in your life so far." After I started filling it out, I was like, "Wait, maybe I didn't answer that right." So I added, "When I made the choice to," just so I can make sure I structured the sentences right, and then I added, "I feel like there have been lots of little choices," because I was trying to clarify that I felt
Yeah,
like they were little choices. I'm like, "Why do I do
yeah.
that?" I'm like
Well, I think that's also it's interesting because like, people have criticized my journals and said it's too simple, but they don't
No,
know
no,
that I
no, yes.
research so
Oh,
much,
I
and
love
I
no,
try
no,
to, like,
yeah.
distill it into a very particular sentence
No, too
structure
simple,
prompt.
no, it's perfect. It's the
Yeah,
perfect
well
amount of everything, like, you provide imagery and white space, which I think is so important because I'm a huge margin writer, and that's actually
mhm,
why I don't even do well with a lot of other things that people make because there's not enough room in the margin, and I'm like,
mm.
"No, I gotta add the little notes
Give me space.
about why I wrote the notes," so I, for one, am very grateful, so Yes.
Aw, thank you. And like what you were saying, like how you're explaining for yourself, like, and I need to set up this, like, this is, I
Yeah.
need this particular word in the sentence so that you know
Yes.
this was where my mind was
Yes.
at in this blah blah blah.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
that's kind of how I set up the journals is to
It's
like for
perfect.
my 52 list kids journal, which is my 52 list project. One of the prompts is what are all of the different things you want to try when you get older? Not
Mm.
who do you want to be or what do you want your job to be? I just want kids to have
Gosh.
permission to try. Like that's those little
That's
tiny words,
huge.
those little different sentence
Ooh.
structure. It's so important for people to have to hear that because when you
Yes.
grow up just saying who you're going to be, then you're like,
Mhm.
ah, I'm fixated on being one person
Exactly.
forever. No,
Mm.
no, you need permission to just try
That's
lots of
so
things.
powerful. So powerful.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's important.
I love that.
Thank you. Well, let's get into it. Tell me some of the best choices you've made in life so far.
Yes, so buying an Apple Pencil.
Ooh, yeah. But
That was the
yeah.
first one I wrote down because I feel like it kinda changed my life. Like, when I bought that
Mhm.
Apple Pencil, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute." It was perfect for my, like, just needing to make things, but also feeling bad about always buying supplies and not finishing using the supplies. So that
Yeah,
was a
we have
key
the same
moment. It was like
brain.
you can do whatever you want without that fear.
Yeah.
Just it's $100, yes, but then you don't have to buy it again. Like, it's just
Yes.
$100 just one time. So
We
that was
have
like,
the
yeah.
same brain, I think, because I love to make art, but I hate waste. I hate
Yes.
the accumulation of things because then it's
Yes.
like each of them lose their
Yes.
importance
Mhm,
to me
mhm.
because there's
Yes.
piles. Oh,
Yes.
I don't like that. I
And
wanna love
yes.
everything.
Oh, yes. Yes, and then, like, when I try to paint with, like, actual acrylics and, like, that blue is sitting over there and I didn't use it enough, I start feeling bad for
Yeah.
the blue, and I'm
I'm
just like,
sorry,
"Oh,
Blue.
how dare me?" Like, I spent all that money on that blue, and all the other colors are like, "Dang, Morgan, like, you use that, but you just leave blue kinda hanging. Isn't blue one of your favorite colors?" Like, and I can't even paint anymore, so I love digital painting because all the colors are equal, and we
Yeah.
don't have to worry about that, so
I'm not
they're
creating
equal, they're
personalities
infinite.
color. And no one's mad at me. Great.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, your Apple Pen really gave you so much release and freedom from so many
Yes.
things to fixate on.
Mhm. Yeah, I was like, "No, I don't have to go spend $200 on spray paint because I can't
Yeah.
figure out which 3 colors I need." So
Mhm.
oh, yes. So another one was, the choice to move to different cities. So I've moved a whole lot, and that's something that I'm just like, I'm glad I've done it because I've learned so much from all the places. Another one was to try out a lot a lot of this has to do with just the choice to just, like, do something because I couldn't make a choice. So,
Mhm.
try out a lot of different schools and educational experiences. So I transferred, like, I think, my transcript for undergrad has, like, 4 schools on it. And I did a lot of moving around, and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, it was kind of expensive at the time, probably stressed out my parents a little bit, but I'm glad I did it because I'm like, I didn't know. I need to find somewhere else. So,
Yeah. And I think that's also, like, very
yes.
reflective of, like, you I'm similar, I also transferred. I went to a
Mhm.
school, it was not healthy for me, it was not right for me, I was severely depressed, on the edge of suicide, and I knew, like, I there's got to be another option, there's got to be
Mhm.
another option. Everybody's telling me stay here because it's what's best for me, but I know what's this is not right for me.
Yeah.
Um, and that is that conflict of you probably had lots of people in society saying, "Why would you change? That's bad." And you're like, "No,
Mhm.
I know there's something better for me,
Yes,
but I'm
yes,
gonna
yes.
have to try so many things to get there."
Exactly. Oh my goodness, yeah. Because it's like a lot of times and, we didn't have that language back then because we didn't know what was, all these other layers, but
Yeah.
it was like and I can't just take other people's word for it either
Mhm.
because I've got experience it myself, so, yep.
Totally.
Yep, I'm glad I did it. And because I will say too, it helps me because now I end up with what work I do now, I end up getting to speak to a lot of young people. And I'm so glad that I have these stories of like, yeah, so I failed biology. I moved to the city and didn't know what I was doing. Like, because I'm like, these are real experiences that people are still navigating through. So I'm grateful that I'm like, yeah, my story is absolutely all over the place.
Yeah,
And somehow
people
I'm
need to
still
hear
here.
that.
So
Yeah,
yes.
and we haven't even, like, mentioned yet your profound successes. This human has, like, almost 2 million followers on Instagram. You have your own app that you've created. It's just bazonkers, bazonkers, and amazing and profound,
Thank you.
and it's so important for people to hear, like, from the outside, people will just see success.
Yeah.
But they need to hear and know you are a real human, you have real struggles,
Yeah.
and that is so permission granting for other people to know, like, I'm allowed to
Yeah.
be what culture at large says is messy, but for me,
Mhm.
it's just
Yes.
being curious. I'm
Yes,
allowed to be
absolutely.
curious.
Mhm. I'm allowed to be curious. Yes, that is absolutely where I'm at, and I try to stay there, and it's yeah, it's been an experience. I feel like the whole thing that ended up happening with my art, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. It's like you make this thing, and then it's like, oh, okay, it took off, and do people feel the way about it that I feel about it? Like what's deeper here? So I'm
Mhm.
still unpacking that.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Yes, but yeah, another one was just the choice to pursue a diagnosis. So that
Mhm.
one, and I put again because I did try, and then I thought the doctor was right, but I tried again. And then the other one was learn all the instruments I've learned. So I play guitar, I play harp. Harp was my first one
Woo!
actually. I can still play the harp at like a, like a 6-year-old level. So if you don't play the
Mhm.
harp, I look like I know what I'm doing. But someone who actually plays, it was like, okay. I know a chord or two still. Harp,
Do you know the
guitar,
musician
keyboard, bass, all the things.
thing?
So
Oh,
mandolin.
yeah,
So yeah, I love playing instruments. I don't play as much now as I could. I won't say
yeah.
should, as I could.
But
I
we're allowed
wanna
to get
try to
your
do it more.
phases.
Yes, exactly. I'm
Those your
looking at my
phases.
guitar in the corner, but that's the thing. I feel with objects, like I'm looking at the guitar and I feel like my guitar is just like, yeah, I hear you talking about me, but you
Yeah.
ignore me. Like that is like I'm looking and in my mind, the guitar is like making a face like
Yeah.
just like off like a mockumentary office style staring at me into the camera, like,
Yeah.
yeah, she talks about me, but then she doesn't even look at me during the week. So
Yeah, there's this false, definition of autistic people as not being empathetic. I would argue so the opposite. Like,
yeah,
I, um I cannot watch cartoon movies of animals. I
yeah.
cannot. I, as a kid, watched 5 minutes of the end of All Dogs Go to Heaven, and I puked because I was so stressed out about
That
these
move
animals.
that movie, you
It's too
just opened up a whole portal, like, in the back of my brain. Yeah,
It's too much, but, like, and then on the other hand, I can watch, like, reality, like, frontier shows where people have to, like, kill an animal, skin it, and use all its parts, but my little logical brain is like, "Well, they honored the animal, they're using
yeah.
every part, they're respecting every element, so I can totally watch this." But I cannot watch a cartoon animal, like, contemplating death. I can't.
It's too much. It is too much. It's fascinating because I can watch and I do watch like, I love animation, but for me, it's still a similar thing is that it does something to me that is different
Yeah.
than other. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out too. I'm like, why? Why is that? But yeah, it affects me. It gets to me. And yeah, all dogs go to heaven. I have not heard that in years. But I had like a reaction when you said it. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's in my
I think
body.
I let myself forget the plot.
Mhm.
So,
It's so sad. But I think
oh my
that's
goodness.
one of
Yeah.
your autistic superpowers is that, we every single thing is precious to us.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
so because there's so much that we can't comprehend in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways, what we can
Mhm.
is so special and so precious, and we want that guitar to know I love you. I have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
question about you. I'm coming back,
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
promise.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, yeah, and I feel like it definitely informs, like, what I do with my art and stuff for sure, because, I mean, I get asked a lot, they're like, "How do you make all this art? How do you make all this poetry? How do you have all the time?" And I'm like, "Well, because I'm walking around throughout the day thinking about how purple feels about me and how I feel about the color purple." And I'm like, "I know." And when I say these things, like, some people, like, they're just like, "Yeah, but what else?" I'm like, "No, that's really it. If I sit and I commit to paint this digital canvas all purple, I'm gonna have some things to say about the
Yeah.
way that purple is on that page and my role in that purple on that page." So, and I bring that into how I speak to people, how I talk to people. It's like I write poetry in response to stories that people share with me. And
Mm,
there have been times where it's only happened maybe once or twice where I've written something for someone and then they responded and said, "Yeah, this doesn't really resonate with me." And I just think, I'm like, "Oh, I wonder why that was." And I say, "Okay, well, what could I have said differently?" And I'm so fascinated by how other humans, like, think about different poetic references. Like, some people are like, "Oh, well, a mountain doesn't have that same significance to me because this."
mm,
And I consider all of that, like, when I'm making anything. Not that I can think about every scenario, but
yeah.
yeah, just lots of thoughts over the thoughts over the thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a part of empathy. I think that's what I was trying to
Uh,
say. So
hugely. Yeah, because you want to understand people. I think that's also something we have
mhm.
profoundly in common is I have this urge and need to create because I want connection. I
Mhm.
want to understand. I want to be able to put myself in someone else's shoes. I'm
Yeah.
hungry for that. Not in a way where I want to take, but in an empathetic sense. I really want to
Mm.
know how you feel truly.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've also been in so many relationships where I've tried to just trust the words coming out of a person's mouth while my body
Mhm.
feels something different from them. But I
Mhm.
know, an old therapist told me, like, "You've gotta take people at their word," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it sounds like it doesn't resonate with what their body's telling me."
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
also is, like, an autistic empathy thing is, like, I really, really feel people.
Mhm.
So I get confused when the words they say don't match what I'm feeling from them,
Mhm.
and later they'll eventually be like, "You were right, I was feeling this way, but I couldn't face it in the
Mhm.
moment, so I just said this."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so curious, do you, like, with when it comes to words, like, whether people are speaking or if they're writing, when you're encountering words, like, do you feel like there's, like, multi dimensions to different words? So if
Yeah,
someone says, like, "Oh, I'm so happy about that," then I'm just like, when I hear that word happy, it's like 10 sprouts, like, shoot
yeah.
off. I'm like,
Which
"Which
kind happened with
happiness?"
you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like, "Is
it's
this just like
huge.
was that like a filler word, or are you talking about, like, are you?" So,
Mhm,
yes.
yeah. No, that is absolutely how my brain
Which
works.
52 lists of happiness, so, like, there's different variations of happiness.
Mhm,
So
mhm, and I think it's an interesting word, um that everybody fixates on. Like, I grew up my dad's a pastor, but he also is Buddhist, both. So, I grew up with also this language of Buddhism that's like, life is suffering.
Mm,
Boop.
yeah.
That's it. Like, life is suffering. But also, once you accept that truth, then you can pursue happiness and other experiences. Um, the American way is so about, like, denying suffering, denying that it's even there. We're
Yeah.
just gonna close our eyes and not
Yes.
only shut it out in acknowledging the suffering of major people groups in the US, but also within
Yeah.
ourselves. If I deny
Mhm.
it within myself, it doesn't exist. La la la
Yes.
la. So, with 50 Tools for Happiness, it's fascinating to me that this is like one of my most successful books, because I realize while I might have a certain headspace going into creating it, other people are going to attach their feelings about happiness onto
Mhm.
it. Some people are going to pick it up and be like expecting to just be a never experience sadness again by filling out these
Mhm.
journals. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not possible. You need your
Oh.
full range of emotion.
Oh my goodness, we have so much in common because that's literally what I think with all of my book titles. Anytime I have a word, like I have a book called, it's not a part of like the 3 art series, but it's called Pieces of Practice. And I actually think that one of the reasons why it's probably my least popular book is because I don't talk about like, here's how to get there
Mhm.
forever. I don't
Yeah.
give you any steps on like, okay, yeah, here's how I found it and I'm better now. I'm like, no, I'm actively seeking this every day in a billion tiny ways. But
Yes.
that is not, and like you said, America, that is definitely not an American message, a Western message of like, no, it's a whole bunch of like little steps every day.
Yeah.
And you have to
Yeah.
keep returning to that every day. Like, that is not very popular. Like, that's not
No.
what a lot of people want to hear.
No.
So, yeah, I've learned that. So I appreciate the even just the nuance of that, like, you explaining that because it made me realize, like, why I've drawn to your format and what you've created. Because 'cause I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
there's room to explore it." So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that's exactly what you're doing too, and I can see
yes.
that not only in the words that you create, but also in the images that you create.
Mm,
Um, yeah, because every image that you create has so much fluidity to it. Like,
mm.
that is, like, the first word that I think of that, like, even if it's a you're painting a mountain, it still feels like there's flow. And that is so special and so profound and keeps me not only moving through the image, but also keeps me moving through how I'm receiving it.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
thank you.
and
Wow.
that is like, that feels really core to who you are too, is that you are willing to flow through life and you're
Mm.
embedding that in what you create. It's not a static thing, even though you're creating static images. They are flowing, they are moving, they are telling a story, and I think that's probably also what draws people to them is that they're like, yeah, I can. There's room for interpretation. There's room for me to see myself within these spaces. I like to imagine myself flowing through the waters of your images or crawling up a mountain and sliding down. There's I want to play around the moon. There's so much yeah, movement and joy and flow, and I think that really reflects the person that you are, and to me that is like that is a profound example of art. You're
Oh
not
my
just
goodness.
you're doing it. You are an artist.
Thank you. That just wow, you have no idea how much that meant to me because
Mm.
I think about those things and there are times where it feels like does anybody see that part of it? And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you do." So thank you. That
Yeah.
that means so much to hear because
We're
I
out here.
really do
I'm
think
not
about all
just
those things.
yeah, this is not just an iPhone background for me. This is
Mm.
I'm feeling things when I see it.
Thank you. Oh,
Yeah,
thanks for sharing that with
of
me. Wow.
course.
Wow.
Well, what are there any
Yeah.
more things on your
There
list?
yes, I said, getting back into playing video games again. So, I just started getting really, really into that way more than ever before, like, my phone is,
Nice.
like, 70% games now.
Yes. I
I'm
am
just like, "I
excited
love
for that.
games." Like, we would went to the store, I bought some board games, I'm just like, "These look fun." Like,
Yay!
I'm gonna buy them. So that's been really fun. It's been again, me discovering that not everybody likes games. I'm proud of myself because I'm like, well, that makes me like them a little bit more. So,
Mhm.
so yes, I'm having fun with that. And another thing is just the choice to say goodbye to a city at the right time. And city could probably be replaced with a bunch of other things too. But just all
Mhm.
the times where I was able to like just zoom out and say, "Oh, okay, time to go."
Mhm.
Proud of that because sometimes I feel like that can take me a while. Another one was just to post that poem on Pinterest. So the poem that kind of really started my whole thing, I was like, that was a choice to do that. I mean, it was very personal. And I didn't really feel like I I didn't really know what was gonna happen with that, and it ended up kind of changing everything for me. So,
Mhm.
that was pretty huge. Another one was, buying my son his first train set because that has turned into, like, a whole other world. Like that is ultimately what helped me see, like, remind me, hey, you love games and playing, and that's a whole part of your life that a lot of conditioning has happened that told you, no, you need to grow up and focus on these things. So yeah, I can tell you about Thomas and all his friends. Like he's got like a whole bunch of new friends too. I can go on and on. Like I'm always on eBay trying to like find these because he likes these YouTube videos where they find these like really obscure parts of the Thomas,
Nice.
like the Japanese version of Thomas, and then he gets really set on that. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, well, they don't have that at the store, so let
Well,
me let me try to find it. Maybe someone in Japan is selling one. So that's been fun. Like I over the past, being a parent of a toddler through all of this it's been challenging for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of parents talk about that, but that's been a fun, like, wow, we're having a lot of fun here, and I'm glad we have
yeah,
this, and I'm glad that I just kind of I was like, I think he would like it. I think he would like a train set, and I was just like, let me just buy like a nice one, bought one for like $100, like a whole set, and I was like, I think it's and I feel like it's changed his toddler life. Like it's
yeah,
everything is trains and I love it. Another one is and it actually ties back into the friends thing because I was just talking about one thing that my list was like saying like, oh, maybe we're not that close. Like, and
yeah,
that's okay. Cause I've just realized I'm like, oh, I think I need friends who are actually interested in things that I'm interested in. And that's actually been a really big thing for me. Is like I've had a lot of proximity friendships or we had something in common for a period of time and then like we changed and we grew, but I always felt pressure to keep adapting to their interests, so whatever they were
yeah,
interested in.
yeah.
And it's not even always, well, actually my case has never actually been like this like horrible thing that happened. It was just me that realizing like that sometimes I tend to self-forget and I forget about myself and what matters to me. And I was like, yeah, I I'm one of my special interests, things I love is theme parks. So, I'm like, even
Me too.
it's like for I'm so curious as to why you love them too, because for me, I love that because I'm like, it's not that I don't like leaving the house, but I was just like, there's just so much I like going places where things have been laid out and there's like a map and I can follow the
Yeah.
map and I can choose if something is too loud or too much for me, I can just leave.
Mhm.
If you go to a party with people and you're just like, it's too loud, I'm gone. Then it's like, why? Oh, you can stay. I'm like, no,
I
I'm done.
can't.
I've had enough. So yeah,
I don't hate
anytime
you, I
where
just can't.
yeah,
It's
so
kind of like
it's
I think it's like a big somatic experience thing. Like,
mhm.
when I used to have a very, very busy life and busy career, and I traveled a lot and went to trade shows and conferences and blah, 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 I would look for the closest roller coaster within wherever I was going, and on the last day of my trip, I would try to go ride a roller coaster because I just,
Oh my
like,
gosh, yes.
need it. I just need, like, this
Yes.
somatic release.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I know that I'm safe
Yes.
and I can have some sort of, like, release, and it's a play. Like, I've had to perform for a few days, and I've
Mhm.
had to be on my best behavior and be an adult, and now I just need to play.
Yeah.
So that I haven't been on a roller.
Space
Oh
Mountain is emotional regulation for me.
my god, me
Like,
too.
I get on that ride and I close my eyes and the jolt, everything. Yep. Yep.
Feels so good.
I get that completely.
So
Oh.
good. Yeah.
Ah, but
So
yes, it was yeah.
we're gonna meet up at a theme park. That's gonna be our first
Yes, I
hangout. I
am
would
so excited about this.
love that. I haven't been on a roller coaster since pre-pandemic, and I'm
Yeah.
constantly telling my partner, like, "I just need a
I
roller
know, I know. Oh my
need
goodness.
it."
It's yes, yes, yes. Mhm.
Well, you are a treasure. We
You
have, I don't
too.
just say that because we basically have the same brain, but it is so, comforting and relieving to just hear someone like you share your life experiences. To know I'm not alone and so many other people who are listening are also not alone. That is so,
Yes.
so important. We
Yes.
need you in the world. We need to see
Mm.
you in the world. We need your visibility. We need your art, we need your music, we need all
Thank
of it,
you.
and it is such a gift that you're giving to the world, and thank you so much for showing up and being here.
Wow. Well, thank you. I can reflect those words right back to you. I'm so grateful that we were able to make this connection. And yeah, it's that this is a wonderful thing to happen today. I'm just gonna say
Yay!
that. I'm like, oh, I feel equipped, empowered, seen, heard, all those wonderful things that you
Yes,
want to feel in life. That's how I feel right now. So thank you. Thank you so
I'm
much
so
for
glad.
creating the space. And yes, I'm sure this will be the last time. There will be a roller coaster somewhere in the
It'll be a
future,
roller
and
coaster.
it will be amazing.
All right. Bye, my new best
Bye.
friend.
Yes. Same.